First of all, I just want to say, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot today, congratulations on Sandman. It is an extraordinary series and you are fantastic in it. And I'm a huge fan of the source material, so I was going to be a really tough judge, but I was really blown away by it. I understand you were familiar with it. So how did you first discover the comic?
My dad and I collected comics for many years, and it had always been in the ether. You know, I don't think you can be interested in comic books and not have heard about the Sandman at some point. Mm-hmm. But I had never finished it all the way through. I had never sat down and gone through the entire thing. So my experience with it and my understanding of it was very different from what it is now, obviously. But it was always around. And when I got older, I was kind of starved for representation, and I looked for characters in literature and in comic books that identified as, non-binary or gender fluid or trans or queer in any way. And Desire, of course, is one of the most prolific examples of that. And that reignited my interest in the Sandman, even though I was a huge fan of Neil Gaiman. It was just one of the works that I didn't do the proper insane deep dive on. So that kind of lit the flame for me a little bit. And then, of course, when it was being adapted, I was very interested. And I kind of chased after it from there.
Yes, I saw an interview where you talked about how you found, you landed this role. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was shooting another series in New Zealand called Cowboy Bebop for Netflix, mm-hmm. and we were in quarantine, and I was very tired and a little delirious, and I knew it was being made, and Neil had recently been tweeting a lot about it because it had just gone back into production. So I decided that instead of asking my agents, because it was about 4 a.m. in New Zealand, that maybe I'd just tweet him for more information, just to find out if Desire was even making an appearance in season 1, because I didn't know how contained, it's Desire doesn't appear until number 10. And so I was very grateful that he got back to me within 15 minutes and sort of gave me all the info. And it was very cool, very exciting.
I guess it was just meant to be. I remember when I first saw the cast list, announced, I was like, oh, yeah, they're nailing it. This is perfect casting. What was it? I mean, aside from, Desire being a non-cis character, what was it about them that you really connected with?
I liked that they weren't, similar to Dream, were neither a hero nor a villain. Mm-hmm. I love that everyone in this story is so deeply flawed and also so redeemable that it really depends on your experience of the story and who you're following and who you're rooting for. How that influences how you interpret it. So for me, I of course loved just the design and the representation and the millions of things that came along with the part. I don't know, it's kind of a dream role. It's a really delicious part that's everything Frankenfurter and Hedwig and all of these things that I adored growing up. And it's a really naughty, sexy thing.
Yeah, I mean, I love how the character really embodies the duality of Desire. On one hand, you have the allure, but there's also the avarice side of Desire, and all of those are present in this character. How was, like you said, it was a pretty rich character. How was that experience for you getting to kind of play this morally ambiguous character?
Well, it's fun because you kind of have free reign to do whatever the relationships ask of you in the context of the show. And I just kept going back to what Desire does as a function in the real human experience and all the different ways that manifests. And that really helped keep me on track in terms of being able to understand why they do the things that they do in the series, and especially in the grander scheme of the comics. Because Desire is so many things throughout the series and goes through probably more changes than any of the Endless, because it's a constantly shifting thing. So I I had a lot of fun. I mean, in this season in particular, you know, the main relationships that I have are with Tom Sturridge as Dream and with Donna Preston as Despair. And the difference between the two siblings, like how they relate to me, it's astounding. There's a chasm between them. And, you know, in one person's story, Desire is a hero, and in the other's, Desire is the villain. And I love that in Donna and I's relationship, you know, Desire really cares about this individual so much. You know, Desire and Despair are so very close, and Desire wants Despair to stick around and to have fun and to mess with their brother with them, because they know that this is not the first Despair. Despair is one of, you know, it's so hard for an Endless to die, and Despair has died, you know, presumably by their own hand. And so the fear of losing another sibling and wanting to help make them happy and help keep them alive, I think is very noble and very, albeit selfish in some ways, is a very heroic journey. So it was fun to be able to play that and know that that's what's going on in one world, and then know that like Dream's coming over to me in the threshold and was so exhausted and so upset. And I'm just kind of like, hi.
Yeah, I mean, I love the complexity of that character. I think, you know, genre filmmaking has not always been very kind to non-cis characters and non-cis, and to some degree, I think things are definitely getting better, and can to some degree have overcorrected, where it doesn't allow for like the full humanity of non-binary and trans characters. And I love how messy Desire can be. Was that something that really stood out to you?
Of course, yeah. I mean, what a thrill to be treated like a cis actor for once, you know, what a thrill to be given the opportunity to paint with all of the colors that any other actor is given, as opposed to having a very limited scope of, well, this is our idea of a trans person, and they have to be good because blah, 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 or they have to be this because of, you know, a litany of reasons. So it was liberating to be able to play a character in which I was just playing a character, and I didn't have to think about anything other than the relationships. Because it's easy to get caught up in all of that. And yeah, you can see it in all forms of representation. It's this series, I think what it does better than pretty much anyone that I've seen is the massive amount of queer representation that is so present in the show, without comment, without plot points that are specific to sexuality or gender. And I think it's really groundbreaking the way that those characters are also portrayed as deeply complex. There are both, you know, heroes and villains and neutral and everything that surrounds all of those things. So Desire kind of being, you know, an ultimate catalyst of that is really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, it's an incredibly inclusive series, like in terms of gender and sexuality and race and age. I mean, it's really a beautiful sort of, you know, representation of real life.
Yeah, it's a reflection of the world that we live in, and a reflection of the world that Neil lives in and comes from. And I think that that's why it stood the test of time this long.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that they even went above and beyond with making sure to like cast that way. Was it important to you to see Desire played by a non-cis actor?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, as long as it was being portrayed by someone who is not of a cis experience, I would have been happy. You know, I think that it's challenging if the main feature or the thing about your character is so embedded in them not having that a very clear-cut singular relationship to a binary. It's really hard to then take a cis actor who lives in that binary and then say, okay, you know, go have fun and play and don't mess it up, because there will be pitfalls, and it won't necessarily come from a place of lived experience as much as researched experience or, you know, pretense. And so to be someone who walks through the world like Desire does in reality, is very nice and wonderful for me, because I get to put all of myself into the part and not have to do any sort of, research or teaching when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think it's also going to be really impactful for, queer and trans kids watching to get to see a non-cis person play that role. Is this the kind of show or representation that you would have wanted growing up?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was always watching things like Hocus Pocus and wanting to be Bette Midler,
Same.
Right? I mean, there are these like iconic, there's something about queerness and that moral duality that kind of coexist in the things that I find interesting about storytelling. And I love those characters that we kind of like, they're really delicious and a little bad, but also really good and really fun to root for. And I think that Desire is the ultimate form of that. Mm-hmm. So to be able to do it in a Neil Gaiman universe, someone whom I've been obsessed with and respect immensely, for decades, I feel like I've hit the lottery when it comes to, just a career and a job. And I hope it lasts as long as humanly possible.
Yeah, the show is incredible. It's like, I think, like thematically beautiful, but also very visually beautiful. Mm-hmm. Can we talk a little bit about your costuming? Because I love it. There were a lot of different ways I could take it, but I love the button earrings and the power suit and the full 80s power lesbian. Yeah. Did you have any input on that, or at least did you have some feelings about that?
Yeah, no, we had many meetings and many mood boards, and yeah, there was a lot of input there. But the Desire was born in terms of the comics, was introduced to the world in 1989 and is so ingrained in the work of Patrick Nagel in a way that it felt so silly to jump into this show and not honor that a little bit. So I loved the direction that we took Desire in this first season, because then as time goes on, if we continue to create more episodes, there are so many looks and so many evolutions to Desire's design and fashion and outfits that I cannot wait to get to, at some point. So it was really cool to take season 1 and sort of be like, well, this is our, let's just lift aspects of the comics and kind of, do our own real world thing with it, but make it feel the way that, it felt when we first were introduced to this character, when we first read these books. And I think they did that wonderfully with the set and with the costumes, the fact that we really did translate the cat suit pretty well, while also putting our own unique twist on it, giving it the plunge and the big feathers, so it felt different. It's really fun. It's cool to get to go to work and have these conversations.
Well, it came out wonderfully. The show is great. You are great. I can't wait for people to see it. I think they're going to really love it. And this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Have a great one.
You too.